Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar, How Wabtec Keeps New Product Introduction on the Fast Track. This event, brought to you by Quality, is sponsored by ETQ. I'm your moderator, Daryl Sealand, Editorial Director of Quality. Thanks for joining us. Today's panelists are David Isaacson and Stephen Pfister. As Senior Director of Product Marketing at ETQ, David has over 25 years of experience in software product marketing and product management. As a Senior Manager of Product Management at Wabtec Corporation, Stephen has 10 years of experience in manufacturing and rail industries. Don't forget to submit your questions, and later in the program, our presenters will address as many as possible. Today's event is being recorded and archived on qualitymag.com. And now I'm excited to turn it over to today's presenters, David Isaacson and Stephen Pfister.
About how Wabtec keeps new product introduction on the fast track. I'm really excited to have Stephen Pfister from Wabtec joining us today. Stephen has been a customer with ETQ for a while, and I think the story and the information he's going to give us in a couple of minutes is going to be really interesting. I think it really speaks to how an organization can use the new product introduction process to get high quality products to market. First, I'll give a little bit of an introduction as to ETQ, and then we'll get into more of the Wabtec quality journey. We'll have a little bit of discussion, and as Daryl said, we'll then take questions from all of our attendees. So briefly, let me give you an introduction to ETQ. We've got over 29 years of leadership in the quality management space. We have been providing a broad set of applications that address a number of quality needs, new product introduction just being one of those. We are dedicated to making sure our customers have competitive advantage through a cloud native and agile platform, which means that as situations change, and if the last 18 months have taught us anything, change is a constant, you have a platform that is able to change as your needs need to be adjusted. So it's really critical to have a solution that works in the cloud, takes advantage of the most current and most innovative technologies today, and that is a direction that ETQ is in today and continues into the future. We have a set of award-winning products that allow us to have a global solution for our customers. We know our customers work on a worldwide basis. Therefore, we want to make sure that they have a solution that takes advantage of that across the board. Another key benefit that we see is that ETQ provides quality management solutions for a number of different industries, and we're able to leverage those learnings across all of our customers. So the best practices from food and beverage and life sciences and electronics and manufacturing and all the different industries that we serve, we're able to bring those together into the ETQ Reliance quality management solution. And we provide this solution across a variety of different enterprises, from some of the very largest in the industry, and you're going to hear from one of those in a few minutes with Wabtec, to very small organizations as well, all being able to take advantage of a solution that has that flexibility to meet different customer needs with the same high quality management that our customers have come to expect from ETQ. And when I talk about the breadth of the customer base, this just gives you an example of where our customers are and the different industries that they're in. It's a fairly broad set of customers across a very broad set of different industries. So today we're going to hear specifically about new product introduction. And it is one of the multitude of solutions that ETQ provides. We have, in fact, a set of 40 different applications in 8 different solution sets that we bring to the market. And so in a minute, we'll hear from Stephen and the journey through their use of our solution set here, the applications that you see listed here. But it really allows you to start at the beginning and build quality into your products from the time you've said, I want to bring a new product to market. Let's start designing it. When I think about the process and looking at the entire product design philosophy, what we want to look at is something that is standardized and repeatable and can take advantage of a number of different capabilities. And as you watch this slide build out, you'll see that it is a standard flow from the time that you have that idea for a new product to the time that you're actually bringing it to market. And we want to make sure that every step of the way is documented appropriately, that you know exactly that you have steps that are repeatable in the design and the manufacturing process, and that once it gets to the end and ready to go out the door, you've produced a product that you can be proud to put your name on. So with that, and I don't want to steal any of Stephen's thunder, he'll walk us through the design philosophy at Wabtec in terms of new product introduction. So Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you to take it from here.
Thanks, David. My name is Stephen Pfister. I've been with Wabtec Corporation, formerly GE Transportation, pre-merger, for nearly a decade. Wabtec Corporation is a leading global provider of equipment, systems, digital solutions, and value-added services for the freight and transit rail industries. We're really a combination of 3 companies that is collectively around 4 centuries of experience across the rolling stock and rail industry: Wabtec, GE Transportation, and Faiveley Transport. And we've been using Reliance since around 2011, 2012 timeframe. Just a little bit more about, our company. We manufacture some of the largest components, like our flex drive hybrid locomotive, down to some of the smallest, like a brush holder or some rubber seals and plastic components. The range of what we manufacture is often staggering and intimidating to those looking from the outside in. It's across more than 60 different sites. And so when you consider the full supply chain implications of having all of those different sites that are manufacturing parts, on top of all of the dependencies that we have on buy parts, having a really strong new product introduction strategy starting in pre-production, since this is where we see the biggest impact of using Reliance lies, is critical to ensuring all of the things that David described make up a strong new product introduction program. On-time delivery to customer, ensuring product quality from the very beginning, the design phases, through customer delivery, and ongoing evaluation to ensure that that product quality is consistent and that our customers are seeing and feeling that same impression that they felt the first time they saw that product while we were designing, building, and delivering it to them. And we do that through a variety of different mechanisms. The first is by leveraging ETQ's production part approval process solution. This serves as our source of truth, so that when we go and evaluate our supply base and begin to consider which common items that we can borrow from amongst our own make and buy parts, that we can see all of those qualified components in one place, along with all of their characteristic and attribute data that can help us make collective good decisions on which suppliers to source material from. Now, we do this by integrating fully with our ERP and PLM systems. Now, we have a multitude of them, and we are not fully integrated with all of them. However, for a large portion of our business segments, we have connectivity to many of our ERP and PLM systems, which allows us to bring attribute data like safety attributes, business critical attributes. So if we know that an item is critical to overall systems architecture, we may want to provide extra due diligence or consider our suppliers' capabilities or capacity before the bid process begins and we award that business during, the overall NPI process. And so that full integrated solution is really critical before we go out and start kicking off our sourcing strategy, making sure that we're making the best decisions on component cost, that we're evaluating our supply base for best cost countries. We retain all of that data through the qualification process, and that we're looking at the coupled engineering data to ensure that any of our critical parts or parts that have crashworthiness attributes, that are emissions critical, are getting that extra due diligence. With that, we also have engagement initiatives, so all of our suppliers can interact with our supplier-facing tools in our Reliance instance. And so where we see opportunity for suppliers to improve their own capacity and capabilities, we engage with them using Reliance as a means to collaborate and drive those outcomes. For instance, if a supplier is looking to introduce a brazing process where they didn't previously have brazing as a special process that they offered in their part production, we can work with them and monitor the introduction of that process to ensure that they're doing it correctly and they're meeting all the standards that our customers are outlining for us. We do all of our supplier audits through Reliance. And so as we're looking at that capacity and processing capability planning up front in our NPI process, we can schedule the necessary audits to ensure that we're complying with all regulatory and customer requirements. That way, there's no surprises. We can see and feel how our suppliers behave, how they're producing material and components and items in a way that complies with our standards, so that at the end of the line, when we have our first article and we're looking at it together with the customer, we know more about all of the items inside that assembly, thanks to those upstream processes. So moving on to adapt, we know that there are things that happen during the NPI process, and notably after the design period and when we begin to assess manufacturability, building what we might call the rabbit at Wabtec, but that first specific assembly that is going through production, we want to be able to track everything that's happening with it and any subsequent, material we might be building for the customer. We do that through a couple of different means. First is by having a extremely well integrated non-conforming material report process inside Reliance that integrates with our ERP, that can automate scrap and can build back our the pain that we feel from suppliers sending us non-conforming material. This gives us the reporting capabilities and leverage to be able to assess our carried inventory cost at any given point in time, to understand which suppliers are driving up our defect rates, and reposition ourselves in our supply chain to adapt to those uncomfortable situations where we're faced with bad parts. Reliance is a really key enabler to ensuring that we're staying on top of things like scrap costs, that we're dispositioning our non-conformances correctly, and that we're recovering the money that we need to from our suppliers when they do need to be sent back or reworked, or that they become unusable. Another thing that Reliance does really well for us is it manages a process called our product change request. Often when we're going through the NPI process and we're manufacturing something for the very first time, we find that our designs aren't always one-for-one producible on the floor as engineering envisioned them. Maintaining this level of integration with our PLM system, we drive certain inputs from our PLM system into this tool to monitor all of the engineering change that comes out of those findings during the manufacturing process, so they can be sent to engineering in a timely basis, and that red line drawings and recommendations from our engineering teams can be communicated directly to the floor, our manufacturing floor, through Reliance, so that we never really have assembly stuck waiting on engineering. They're being notified on a timely basis. They're leveraging Reliance's native ability to escalate when things age. And it's notifying the appropriate people at the appropriate times based off the phases of the workflow. Our business finds this as a very impactful tool for managing all of those late changes that may need to be made during the NPI process. And lastly, we have a process that helps us adapt with some of the uncomfortableness of NPI called our part quantity exception process, which is where we give our supply chain the ability to present decisions that they consider risky or out of process to a multi or a cross-functional team, and allows them to engage leadership to get the necessary recorded and traceable approvals to make the correct purchasing decision based off the circumstance. This has helped us avoid a lot of cost of poor quality simply by getting those approvals and discussions done upfront, discussions that had historically taken place via email, via direct conversations where the necessary input and buy-in wasn't there. All of that is now defined upfront in the tool, in the workflow, and we can see who agreed to what, when, and at what cost. Having that traceability and driving compliance to that process has really helped us keep costs down as we navigate kind of a supply chain that, historically we haven't seen anything like this in quite some time. COVID is, and I'm sure, David and I will talk about that more extensively during the Q&A, but it's a really uncertain time for us. And sometimes we need to manage risk the best way that we know how. And lastly, and briefly, we want to evaluate the decisions that we made during the NPI process through ongoing engagement with our supply base. So inside Reliance, we do first article inspections. We have customer hold points where we're doing dimensional analysis and recording certain CTQs and holding the specific quality control plan open until we've done all of the necessary metrology requirements, document requirements, anything that the customer may or may not require. Reliance gives us the ability to hard stop until that first article inspection is done and approved. We also have an active part surveillance system that Reliance drives that allows us to continue to solicit critical part attributes and other dimensional characteristic data from our suppliers on an ongoing basis. And lastly, we want to know when our products are failing. We want to know early, and we want to we want to engage rapidly to understand why they're failing and, open and be responsive to a dialogue with our customers and get out in front of those sorts of failures as quickly and rapidly as possible. We've solutioned that using Reliance. We integrate with our ERP to drive some of those early failures into Reliance so that the appropriate teams are being notified and mitigation strategies are constructed so that we can come up with a plan to address those failures early on, escalate them to the appropriate teams so that they can be managed, and come up with and use those native root cause analysis and corrective action processes that anyone that's used Reliance in the past is comfortable with, and we integrate all of those workflows together. So with that, David, I guess I'll kick it back to you for Q&A.
All right. Great. Thank you, Stephen. It's interesting.
It's interesting.
So a few questions that we want to just discuss here as we go. First of all, we have a large number of folks in the audience, and one of the benefits I think that they can learn from what you've done is in terms of best practices and lessons learned. So what would you say to the audience that are interested in automating their new product introduction process?
Yeah, I would say cross-functional leadership buy-in is a must, especially if you work in a large organization. Oftentimes, Reliance is seen as a quality management system when it encompasses processes where your stakeholders are cross-functional. Using NPI and manufacturing as an example, sourcing is always going to be present in most NPI discussions where the material that goes into the product you're being made is being sourced. Making sure that initial leadership buy-in and expectations are established is critical. Secondary to that is making sure that you have a systems integration strategy that can support all the nuance of an NPI process. Leverage the native integration tools that Reliance offers. The ability to use connection profiles and RESTful services is incredible. It's lent so much data that we didn't previously used to have inside our quality management system. It now holistically ties it all together and puts it all in one place so that when those cross-functional conversations are happening, you can see the engineering data that's pertinent to MPI. You can see the supply chain data from ERP that's relevant. All of it's bundled. So, think about the landscape of how all of your applications are communicating and tied together today, and come up with a strategy to see how you can leverage ETQ's native integrations capabilities to bring as much data into your process to make the best decisions possible for your customer.
And as you talk about the integration, I know you've integrated a number of systems with the QMS, and I think you're planning on some more. Where do you think you'll go next in terms of integration?
We have over 50 unique ERPs at Wabtec Corporation. There's no shortage of integration requests on our side. So all that, the obvious nature of that response aside, where we see the most value in integrating is with more of our engineering and product lifecycle management softwares, where we can look at our different segments that don't have that integration already existing and see where we can leverage what we've developed already and drive that for the businesses that don't have it inside our tool.
Okay. Now, one of the things you did mention was supply chain and the challenges you faced. How has automation helped with those challenges? How are you dealing with all the upheaval currently that's going on?
Yeah, and this is where I'd say Reliance has been kind of largely beneficial in us evaluating our supply chain, because it allows us to very, very quickly export and manipulate, review, and report out our supply base data to let us make decisions based on customer due dates. So, for instance, we know that ocean freight is a problem globally. We read about it every day on the news. And so we know that if we're going to be sourcing components from across the world, and ocean freight traditionally has a 6-week lead time, right now it's out to 24 weeks. We are going to use our qualification data to be flexible and look, where else might we have a dual source for that same product that may be domestic? Are they facing the same supply chain issues in producing the products that they manufacture that they need for our assemblies and components that we manufacture? Are we able to assess any capacity, or do they use, are they following the same requirements? Are they capable of using a specific special process? All of that information is at our users' hands. And so it's just a matter of logging into the tool and pulling it. We've democratized it in a way where anyone can go and assess across any given commodity, where there might be risk and where we may want to consider looking at qualifying a supplier that has less lead time. Where we traditionally may have opted for a best cost country, how can we balance that against our customer due dates and look inside our supply chain and see where it makes sense? Does that help, David?
Yeah, it does. And my understanding is you have lots of suppliers, correct?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have tens of thousands of them.
Right. So keeping that all organized is mandatory, it seems like.
Yeah. And, just it sounds like it would be difficult, but organizing it in the lens of Reliance, I suppose it's no more difficult than anything else that needs built using a hierarchy. And so,
Sure.
Using master keywords lists, location keywords lists, it hasn't really been that much of a challenge in organizing the data. And I think we're better off for it. If I could turn back time, look back to where we were in 2012, 2013 timeframe and looking at now and just the sheer data set that we have to work off of, data is a commodity in and of itself. And it's definitely positioning us to be better in our industry, having it at our disposal, this unique qualification data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And we have some questions coming in from the audience. I do want to ask one here from Matthew. How does APQP fit into this process?
So it doesn't for Wabtec outside of our transit segment. But it's certain, and David, this may be a better one for you to take because I believe that ETQ in recent versions has a ETQ module, or excuse me, APQP module.
We do, yeah, and it's just part of, we include that early on in the whole process. And in fact, Matthew, we'll get back to you and get you some more information about that. So thanks for asking. A couple other questions, Stephen. One is, we've heard that you guys, people think of locomotive engines as, been around for a long time, but you're doing some really cool stuff in new product development. Can you give us a little insight as to, one of our other guys wanted to ask about some of the new capabilities that you're bringing out that you could talk about, and specifically around electronic vehicles? Is that, yeah?
Sure, yeah. Some of Wabtec's newest engineering development is our flex drive locomotive. It's a battery electric freight locomotive. It's frankly incredible. It was developed in Erie, Pennsylvania, and Reliance was a huge portion of its development. But just from a product perspective, if anyone gets a chance to Google it or look at it, it's a locomotive that goes in a consist that can power the entire train for 30 to 40 minutes on its own 4,400 horsepower output. It can also recharge itself using dynamic braking. So it is a modern marvel. But manufacturing one of these things, you can imagine, it requires a considerable amount of engineering and manufacturing collaboration. The battery unit alone in those locomotives are 20 racks. There's 20,000 battery cells total in that powerhouse locomotive. And so, Reliance served as the model for managing all of the serialization requirements and tracked a lot of the prototyping and defecting of the initial flex locomotive. And so we were able to see where in the initial design we had defects. We were able to track by vendor or supplier serial numbers where we were seeing common pain. And it really did serve in the initial stages of the development of that locomotive to be a very important tool for us to monitor the prototype's product quality as it was being designed.
Very cool, very cool. And I think we're just about out of time. So I thank you, Stephen, for joining us today. I think I turn it back over to Daryl at this point.
Yes, indeed. That is just about all the time we have for questions today. If we were unable to answer your question during a live presentation today, we'll do our best to get that answered for you offline. But please join me in thanking David Isaacson and Stephen Pfister for their presentation, as well as our sponsor, ETQ. If you have any additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to click the Email Us button on the console. Please visit qualitymag.com for the archive of this presentation, as well as information about our upcoming events. We appreciate your time and hope you found this webinar to be a valuable experience. Have a great day.